Hello, hello, and welcome to our tutorial. This is based on some of the work we did in class today. So we're going to have a look at. Sorry, I'm just going to set this up here. Excuse me. We're going to have a look at our options here for our character. So we have a skeleton, and we have a character who can have an idle cycle. He has a walk cycle next. He has an attack cycle, and then he has a dying cycle. So you'll see them a bit more clearly now. Walk and hit and get shot or something. Okay. So that's our character there. Now we have a few issues with a traditional sort of setup for how this character works. So if I press P, our two cubes here fall to the ground because they're both rigid bodies, and this guy flies off in the air. So let's see why. So we're in Blender game. This object is dynamic so that it can move and react in the game. This is also a dynamic object. We'll make it static. The skeleton has no collision. These other items here everything has no collision except this one item here. So if there's an error, it's because this and this can't interact. So basically we've set up sort of a feedback loop. The skeleton is a child of this object. The mesh is a child of that bone. So it can't move until the skeleton moves. Skeleton can't move because it's trapped inside the box because we've told it to do that. And the game engine is going, this is a static object, it's inside a dynamic object, and it wants to push them away from each other. And it can't, so it does this. Now, we want this object to have some sort of collision. We do not want it to have no collision, because then we can't punch somebody. So we want it to be at least static, so that it has collision. But we can see the error that we get. So let's have a look at how we find a solution to that problem. So let's go to these two cubes here. So rigid body and rigid body. I press P, and they land on top of each other. So let's have a look at how we could maybe change that. So they both have collision bounds box, so they're behaving like a box. This here is my ground plane, and it doesn't have any collision on it other than its mesh, the mesh itself. However, it has all these layer masks turned on, and then it's in collision group 1. This only has one collision mask. This is similar, and they're both in collision group 1. So let's just move this guy out of collision group 1 and put him in collision group 2 and press P. So now that's quite interesting. So this character here, or this object, is not in the same group as this one. So they don't interact. But they're both still interacting with this. And this is still in group 1. So this one and this one are, so the top box and the bottom box are in collision group 1, but this one isn't. However, it has a collision mask on to tell it to react to collision group 1, and this has the same. Okay, actually, so this is, I apologize, this is in collision group 2, and this has collision group 2 mask turned on. So let's just press P again. So both of them collide with the ground. This one and the ground are in the same group, and this is in a different group. Okay, so these two cannot collide. And the difference between this guy and this guy is this collision group 2. So let's turn that off and only have one on. So now this and this are the same. And press P. Okay. So now we have full control over what can collide with what. So this is in collision group 2, so it's not set up to collide with these two objects. Coupled with that, it has its collision mask. This is set to 1, this is set to 1, but this and this is set to 1. So collision mask set to 1, collision mask set to 1, collision mask set to 1. But because this is in group 2, and this doesn't have group 2 turned on, this will only collide with things in collision group 1. So let's make a third object and test our theory. Now, scale that back a bit. So this is nice and big, and we'll give it a collision bounds box. So at the moment, it should collide with everything. If it's a rigid body. Whoops. Stereo. So let's put it in group 3. Okay. So this has no relationship with group 3 at all, nor does this, and nor does this. So let's turn group 3 on here and press P. So now both of these objects can collide with things in group 3. So this here can collide with other objects in group 3, but nothing else. This can collide with other objects in group 1. This is only going to collide with things in group 2. And this has layer mask on, so this is not affected by group 2. So what I interact with and what I'm affected by. Okay, so now let's have them all affect, so let's reset them all. So 1 1 1 1 1 1. So P. They all affect each other. Let's take the ground plane and turn on layer 2. They all go through. Okay, so hopefully you can see that we have full control over what can collide with what. So now let's apply this logic here to what we've got here. So this will collide with everything else in layer group 1, and we've got collision mask 1 turned on. And this is set up to be the same. So following the logic that we have over here, we have choices. I can put this into collision group number 2, so when I press P, it works perfectly, because it's only going to collide with things that are in group 2. And if I have another character, I can set it up so he will collide with group 2, so all of him will be group 2, and then his fist will be group 1, so it will be sort of like an inverted version of this guy. So this is how we overcome difficulties with having static, or dynamic for that matter, objects inside each other. We use our collision groups and collision masks to separate them so that we can control what is affected by what without having to turn on ghost or without having to go no collision, which removes our collision detection. Okay, so that's it for now. Hopefully that makes sense, and we shall be using this in class.